Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
Welcome to Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. I'm David Geiger, your host. I've been on Iowa TV and radio for the last decade, and I'm very excited to start up this podcast, Farm Here Daily. We will have a bit of a shorter show today for the Friday episode. We'll be speaking with Logan McCrea of ISU Extension to get a glimpse at crop conditions and planting progress in the southern part of Iowa. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward. You can also follow me at Geiger Reports. We would love to have you join our community, making sure folks in Iowa are informed about what's affecting our farmers here on Farm Here Daily. And joining us on Farm Here Daily, we have with us Logan McCrea, a agronomist with ISU Extension and Outreach for Southern Iowa. Logan, thank you so much for your time today. And you are pretty new to the area in terms of the state agronomist position. How long have you been with them?
I have been in this position since March 3rd, so coming up on about 2.5 months now.
That's pretty awesome. What's your background? Did you go to ISU as well?
Yes, I graduated from Iowa State last May. I was in retail at a co-op in the area for a while. Kind of figured out I wasn't much of a salesman. I didn't love being a salesman, and this position was open, and I kind of threw my hat in the ring, and I guess the rest is history, as they usually say.
Well, I'll tell you what, you are in a very excellent team. I love talking to all the folks at Extension, so I'm happy to have you join in some of the conversations as well. And for being your first position with them, they sure stuck you with one of the terrible areas, the real suffering areas. You have the Iowa's Best Burger right in your jurisdiction.
That's right. It's pretty rough living in an area like that, having the best burger in Iowa,
All right. Logan, let's talk about what's going on in the fields in your area as you drive around, as you walk through the fields, as you field farmer calls. Can you just give me kind of the state of some of the emergence and planting conditions that you've had? Because I assume planting's just about done.
Mm-hmm. So as of Monday, with the NASA's report from the USDA, the crop progress report, planting for corn and beans in south central Iowa was 73% for corn, 64% in soybeans, and then the corn was 40% emerged and beans were 26% emerged. And realistically, if I'm speaking candidly, I think those numbers kind of undershot it going into the report. I was thinking more around the 80% range for both of them, honestly, as far as planting progress. So I've been kind of on the train that I think they've been undershooting a lot of the planting progress reports for the spring. It doesn't make much of a difference one way or another. It's just ego boosting for the most part. But a lot of those early planted corn and soybeans are up and they're out of the ground. And as far as I can tell, haven't really seen a whole lot of issues with some of that that's coming out of the ground early. There's been a few cases of some herbicide injury from the cool, wet soils that we had, after we got 1.5 to 2 inches of rain there on Easter Sunday. But we broke the curse this year. Usually they say when it rains on Easter Sunday, it's going to rain for 7 Sundays in a row. I think we broke that this year. We tested it last year, and it seemed to be pretty true. But this year, we're kind of trending in the opposite direction. So I will take that. But with that in hand, we are kind of getting the point. It's getting a little dry. The drought monitor for South Central Iowa has kind of been progressing in the wrong direction. I think the 9 counties I cover, I looked at the drought monitor when they updated it the other day. All of my counties are in the D0. We're getting to the abnormally dry. So we're not quite into a moderate drought yet, but we are kind of trending in that direction. And, hopefully we got some good chances of rain coming up early next week, and the weather's supposed to cool off from these high heats that we've had this week. So hopefully there's some relief in the front of us.
So That's interesting. You point out the D0 monitor at the moment for South Central Iowa. It's still, if I recall correctly, a pretty huge improvement from last year when the entire state was at minimum D0, with a lot of that South Central area even getting into some of the D3 zones. So there's been a bit of a huge shift from last year to this year, soil moisture wise. But when you're looking at some of the soil moistures and some of the aquifers in the region, are you still seeing a little bit of an impact from last year, or is that more or less healed?
I really would honestly say we're pretty healed from that. We came into this spring, planting spring, and subsoil and topsoil moisture were both 70 to 80% in the adequate range. So we came into this spring and we were really, really good on soil moisture. And they've been throwing a lot of the 1 to 2 to 3 month outlooks for this summer and trying to say that it's going to be pretty dry and pretty hot for what they're expecting with long range forecasts. And that's just a forecast, but if that were ever to happen, the one thing that we could rely on is hopefully having good soil moisture. And we come into that with a full tank of gas, and I'd rather go on a road trip with a full tank of gas than a half tank of gas. So I think we're sitting pretty good right now. There certainly isn't a reason to raise any red bell alarms. Nothing is too dire yet. And like I said, there's some rain coming next week, hopefully. So I think we're sitting pretty good as of right now still.
You mentioned some of the plants, some of the emergence is going pretty well. Lots of crops popping out. Have you had any issue with crusting in South Central Iowa?
There's been a few cases of crusting. There's been some uh, some of the heavier soils down in Van Buren County. I've had a little bit of crusting issues that I've been out on the farm with some farmers kind of looking at it a little bit, but it really has not been too terribly bad. We got that big rain on Easter, and then I think a week to 10 days after that, we were in the point where we needed, like a quarter inch of rain or something along that line to kind of break up that crust. And luckily, a pretty good amount of the area got that quarter inch of the rain right around the time that it needed it. So a lot of the area was kind of looking at some crust, but then they kind of got the rain right when they needed it, really. And that's sometimes the best way to break that crust is just get the rain when you need it.
We're speaking with Logan McCrea, ISU Extension agronomist in South Iowa, South Central region. Logan, what are some of the calls you're fielding from producers? What do you tend to hear questions about right now in this time of year?
hmm So this time of the year in South Central Iowa, this is cattle country. There's hay fields everywhere. So alfalfa has been really, really growing very, very strong in the spring. And last year, if you can remember, alfalfa weevil was absolutely miserable for a lot of producers in the area and across the state. So I think that's been on a lot of people's minds this spring as we've been approaching first cutting time. And this week with the hot and dry weather we had, a lot of guys have been getting out in the field and been getting that first cutting on the ground and even getting it built up. So the alfalfa weevil hasn't been as bad this year. I've still fielded a few phone calls where people were kind of afraid of it just from last year. But the difference between last year and this year is we were out of the field for, like a month or so with rains of all kinds last year. But this year hasn't been too bad. So we've been fielding a lot of alfalfa weevil calls. There's been a lot of early herbicide injury calls too. Just like I mentioned earlier, there's some of the cool and wet weather we had after Easter that can kind of cause a lot of weird things with the plants when they're early stages trying to metabolize a lot of those herbicides. So when that plant gets to the point where it's just trying to metabolize it through that cool and wet soil, a lot of it can just be visual in the way that it appears on the plant. Nothing is usually going to kill that plant. And I think that's most of what I've been seeing through most of my herbicide injury. Has been a lot of just visual stuff. So just a lot of easing people's minds at this time. There's always weird things going on in the field, and the curious minds want to know what it is. And that's a lot of what the questions I get are.
Speaking of about some of that quality, I recall last year, not only with the alfalfa weevil was that a concern, but just the way the rains and then the dry heat, all that kind of combined together. We had some pretty difficult weather for alfalfa for hay and had pretty poor quality, if I recall correctly. Is the quality good?
Yeah, the quality is pretty good this year from everything that I've seen. We kind of use there's a University of Wisconsin has a peak scale. It's a bit of you can match up how what stage your alfalfa is in and like how tall it is, and it'll give you a bit of an estimate on your feed value score for your first cutting. It helps out a lot of producers for deciding when to cut. And the big thing is, like you said, with the weather, whether it lines up with letting you get it cut when that feed value is where you want it, because as it matures more and more, the quality just keeps decreasing. And I think this week with the weather we had, it was beautiful alfalfa cutting weather and getting it dry. And I think a lot of people kind of realize that, and we're starting to get it down. So I think the quality this year's in pretty good shape from this week of the weather we have.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
Before I let you go, I did want to talk about any sort of pest pressure that you may be seeing. Weeds, bugs, anything in particular popping up in southern Iowa at this time?
Mm-hmm. So we've been doing a lot of moth trapping throughout the state with all the extension agronomists, and so far I haven't had any big moth flights at all for the black cutworm moths. I have seen a little bit of cutting activity appearing in some cornfields and a little bit out and about, but other than that, it hasn't been too awful. Early herbicide applications for pre-emergence those fields look really, really good that we're able to get that activating rain on Easter Sunday. But for those that have been trying to fight the wind and the rain and everything that Mother Nature wants to throw at us, it's tough. So there are a lot of weeds that are starting to come up. Everybody's favorite weed, the water hemp, is out there. It's getting its start, and so the eyeballs are on it, obviously, but there hasn't been anything too terribly bad so far, and knock on wood, I hope that's true still.
Absolutely. Let's hope that continues through the rest of the season. Logan McCrea, ISU Extension Agronomist, joining us on Farm Here Daily. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, David.
You are listening to Farm Here Daily, a field forward podcast, and we're going to take a look at the end of the week Friday session at the market close. July corn, a nickel weaker at 4.43.5. September falling 3.5 cents at 4.21.5. Soybeans in July, a penny and a quarter weaker at 10.50, with August down a cent at 10.46.25. Soybean meal in July, $4.50 a ton, in the red at $291.90. Wheat in July, 7 3/4 cents weaker at 5.25, with September falling 7.5 cents at 5.39. In livestock market close, there was a bit more green on the board at the Friday session close. June live cattle up $1.05 a hundredweight at $212.22. August 90 cents more at $206.75. Feeder cattle in May 67 cents a hundredweight more at $296.85, with August $1.77 higher at $297.60. Lean hogs in June 37 cents a hundredweight in the red at $100.32, with July rising a nickel at $104.17 a hundredweight. That is the Friday market close. This is the Farm Here Daily podcast. And we do thank you for joining us here on this bit of a shorter edition of a Friday episode. This is Farm Here Daily, a field forward podcast. Again, in order to keep producing this type of local Iowa content, we would love to have you join our community. Please follow the podcast as well as our social media channel at Field Forward Pod. Additionally, you can find me on social media at Geiger Reports, as well as WHO TV Channel 13. I'm there every day on TV in their morning and new hour programs Monday through Friday. Again, I am your host, David Geiger. I hope you have a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back on Monday. This is Farm Here Daily.